Welcome everyone to the Dream Career course. Today we're having our first session. As usual, it's being held in an open format. And this session is called Cracking the Recruiter's Code. It's quite an interesting topic. Why is this even necessary? For someone to think about their dream career? The fact is, based on the readers of the article, the book, and course participants, you'll most likely get a new position and a 35% salary increase within 6 to 12 months. What article and book are we talking about? The course we're launching today is the Dream Career course. It's closely related to an article, or rather a few articles that I wrote for the Lifehack website, which have been read millions of times. One of these articles is about how to get a raise. There's also an article with 33 resume hacks, and another one with 5 tips on how to ace a job interview. A huge number of people have written reviews on these articles, sharing how they found jobs, got raises, and experienced other positive changes in their lives. Plus, about 2 or maybe even 3 years ago, Roman Jihari and I wrote a book. I'll share a link to it today. The book's readers also wrote to me on LinkedIn about how great it is that such a book exists and how positively it has impacted their careers and lives. So people who are learning how to build their dream career, people who are applying the advice from this course, they're using this knowledge to find jobs, get raises, and secure more interesting positions. This course has a website, and this is what it looks like. It says Dream Job at the end. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Mike Pritula, and here are the companies I've worked for. I've had to do a lot of recruiting, and as a matter of fact, I've put a lot of my recruiting knowledge into this course. In my work, I rely on the best global practices. Here's a list of companies I'm tracking, and I'd appreciate if you could write your city, position, and company. And if you're not currently employed, your previous position and company, please write that down. Let's do this. While you're writing, I'll tell you about the certificates, and when you're done, I'll read out what you've written. For everyone already enrolled in the course, there will be homework assignments. Completing these assignments will allow you to earn a certificate. A certificate upon completion of the course. The course program itself consists of 6 sessions. Today, we're talking in general about how to build a dream career. In the second session, we'll break down all the secrets of $1 million resume. That is, we'll learn how to create the perfect resume, and I'll help you put it together. Elena from Kiev says, I want to get my dream job. Thank you, Elena. In the third session, we'll cover how to ace an interview with a recruiter. The fourth session is about how to avoid burnout both at work and during your job search. This is very important. The fifth session is about how to get a raise. And in the sixth, we'll explore job searching on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a modern platform where people look for jobs. Recruiters use it to find candidates, so it's important to know how it works. Okay, Victoria wrote Borjomi training. Great. And another comment, in search of myself and a new career. Yes, thank you. Thanks to everyone who wrote. Today's session is going to be quite intensive. We'll cover many different topics, so let's not dwell on the program here, but move directly to the lesson. I'll tell you a bit about the history of its creation. I've already mentioned the articles in the book. This course is also closely related to another course, the career coaching course, which I developed in 2012. That course has been running for almost 10 years now. A lot of personal practice has been researched, and many people have been trained in these 2 courses. So now let's talk about dream careers and the perfect job. A person's ideal job is one that emerges as a result of the intersection of 3 circles. The first is the ability to search for a job. The second is understanding what you want. And the third is understanding how the system works. When these 3 factors align, that's when you get the perfect job. So most likely many of us know how to work and many know what they want, but how the recruiting system works and how to look for a job, that's something many people don't know. So we'll start by examining how the recruiting system actually works. Because if we want to find a great job, we need to know what's happening on the other side, behind the scenes. I'll start with how a job opening is created. The thing is, people often just see some job postings on the internet. It lists a position, requirements, and an offer. Any job opening primarily arises from certain business goals. It could be a new task that didn't exist before. It could be some problem that the business is facing. For example, an employee has quit and needs to be replaced. An employee wasn't or isn't coping with the job, so the company is looking for a replacement. Maybe the company lacks necessary expertise and is looking for someone who can bring that knowledge. Sometimes a company needs a star, meaning a star performer, and sometimes a company needs a Superman. These are some of the business goals. After that, once the business goals are set, the company allocates a budget. The manager submits a recruitment request to the human resources department. The job is posted on websites, then selection and hiring take place. What do you think is the most common type of job opening in the market? For what reason? What do you think? What's the most common reason for job openings to appear in the market? An employee left. Replacement. Exactly. Turnover. Turnover is the main reason. When there's an economic growth spurt, of course, new job openings appear in companies. That is, companies start recruiting for new positions. Most often, they recruit people who are already working, so those already employed move to new positions, and again, a replacement vacancy opens up in their place. Plus, the constant movement of people from company to company, yes, that also creates job openings. That's why replacement is one of the most common reasons for job searches. From a job search perspective, replacing an employee is the easiest way to find a job, the easiest way to get into a company. In other cases, the job requirements may be higher, and if the company needs a star or a superman, they might interview for a very long time. Next, there are different types of candidates for each vacancy. For some positions, there are people whose qualifications are excessive. They know much more. They can do much more. And this can be a disadvantage for both people and companies because people might get bored in such positions. For some vacancies, a person's knowledge may be just right, a perfect match. The person knows exactly what the company needs. Next, for some positions, a person's knowledge might be slightly lacking, but overall at an acceptable level, it is generally possible to get a job here too. For some vacancies, the level of knowledge is compromised, meaning the company only hires as a compromise, for example, when it is very urgent or they cannot find anyone within their budget. Next, there could be an inappropriate level of knowledge or even harmful for the position. That is, when an employee would actually be detrimental because they lack knowledge completely. It is very important to understand where you stand in relation to each vacancy and try to find yourself somewhere in this range. This is where you will have the best chances. And it will be most effective from a work perspective. These other levels will create stress problems down the line, and the company may be dissatisfied. Next, when a company has a new task, it can manifest itself in different ways. Sometimes a company needs many similar people at once. For example, a company opens a new store and needs 10 salespeople. Sometimes a company only needs one person, a new position opens up, and only one person is needed. Sometimes a company has an urgent job opening, meaning they need someone yesterday, as they say. This often happens in business. And sometimes a company has a job opening for future prospects. That is, the company opens the position, but it is not like they need someone right away. The company just starts looking in advance. The lowest requirements are set for these types of positions. These are positions with immediate urgency and mass hiring needs. When a company needs to fill many positions urgently, they're willing to compromise. This is where you have the best chances. There are moderate requirements when there are many openings, but it's not so urgent, and also when there's an urgent need for just one position. The highest requirements are for a single position with future prospects. In this case, the company can take a very long time with the process. So it's important to understand what specific position the company you're negotiating with has, and this gives you an idea of your chances of getting hired for a particular position. Let's move on. If the issue is that an employee has left, the company can handle this in different ways. If a valuable employee has left, the company will likely look for someone similar, and the requirements will be high. If an average employee left, neither outstanding nor problematic, the company will usually look for someone similar. And if the employee was weak, the company will honestly look for someone stronger. It's very useful to know the details about the position and how the work is evaluated. Of course, it's much easier to find a job to replace these two types when an average or weak employee has left. That is, when the company doesn't set very high requirements. Next, if an employee isn't coping, someone in the company isn't managing, the company starts looking. This could be a confidential search. The company doesn't tell the employee they're looking for a replacement and may not even publish the job opening. It could be a completely open search. That is, the employee has been told, or maybe knows that they already have some final work date. It could be like this. I call it a decoy duck search. When a company looks for someone to fill a made-up position, intending to hire a person who will eventually replace a problematic employee, here too, it's important to understand the details behind this vacancy. That is, whether someone is there now or not, to understand what will likely happen next. The more you understand about the position, the better you can negotiate, position yourself, and improve your chances. The depth of your understanding of the situation is in your hands. And of course, all of this greatly influences salary negotiations, because there's often a range of possible salaries. The better you understand your position, the more likely you are to get the salary you want. Next, if the company has a problem and needs a real star, it will be a search for the best employee in the market. They'll be looking from the best companies with significant achievements. If you see that they've come to you as if looking for a star, this is where you should ask for the maximum salary. If you see that the company has such a task that they need a very skilled employee, and they're considering you too, you can tell by various signs, especially how they regard your experience, then you should name a higher figure and not be afraid, because there are chances to get a good salary. And most likely you'll have to work a lot too. Because different positions have different workloads, task complexities, and situational challenges. In this situation, you'll likely have to work, as they say, 2 years in one. Next, if the company has a real problem and needs someone I call Superman, for example, a job with a huge amount of overtime, and the company understands that nothing can be done about it for now, or the position and salary aren't very high, like a top position of marketing director for just $1,000, or there's a toxic environment, difficult people, or the company has serious business problems, tight deadlines, low employee motivation. This is what's called a problematic job opening. These job openings need to be considered very carefully, but they're worth considering if you're interested in building a career. If you don't have such ambitions to build a career, then these companies and positions can chew you up and spit you out, and it'll take you a long time to recover from that. So be careful here. You need to understand when to go for it. This usually suits entry-level professionals who want to become marketing directors from a marketing position, understanding that regular companies won't hire them for this role. So you need to go to such a company and deal with all these challenges, but as a result, you can get a great position later. That's one option. Let's move on. How is salary determined? This is also very important to understand. First, the company, of course, focuses on the salary level of current employees. So the company looks at how much current employees are getting and tries to offer the same amount. Next, the company, of course, looks at the market, what salaries are on the market, some minimum, median, maximum, and tries to offer accordingly. But it also happens that a company is ready to offer unique conditions and make salary offers that are outside the standard range. It's very useful to know what the salaries are in this company. Where can you find this out? The question immediately arises. Of course, there are various sources where you can find out how much a company pays. You can try to find company job postings with salaries. Maybe not specifically the one you're considering, but some other position to see that, for example, they pay assistants $1,000. Well, that means it's not a poor company. Next, here's another interesting tip. You can find resumes of company employees where they indicate their salary expectations. Many sites now allow you to see candidate profiles without seeing their last names, just showing the position, company, and salary expectations. You can call employees from this company who are looking for a job, for example, and haven't specified salary expectations, and ask, posing as a recruiter, how much they would like to earn. You can ask HR acquaintances or recruiting agencies because HR typically knows a lot. You can look at the company's corporate photos. For example, I have an acquaintance who was looking for a job, and she received an offer to come for an interview at a company which had a good brand, but it was unclear what this company was really like. Is it poor? Is it rich? Is it normal or abnormal? What did we do? We did a location search on Instagram. There's a search for people, a search for tags, and a search for places on the right. We did a location search on Instagram, wrote the company name, found the office, and looked at the photos. And we realized that although the company has a good brand, the company is quite weak in terms of salary. From the photos, we could see a very basic office, some simple corporate events, juice in plastic cups, and so on. I don't mean to say anything bad, it's just a way to find out about the salary. You can look at what cars the employees of this company drive. For example, in the parking lot. I've done this. I often visit various companies for tours or meetings, and I look at the parking lot. It's very informative because the cars in the parking lot can say a lot about a company. And you can also look at employees' Facebook profiles, that is, look by location, who has tagged themselves at a particular location, what kind of photos people are posting there. This will allow you to gather information about salaries. Let's move on. Of course, if we're talking about a dream career, what is everyone interested in? In finding the coolest career with the highest paying job. Who is paying high salaries today? Of course, information technology companies. You know this meme about getting into information technology, it exists for a reason. It's true. If you manage to get a job in an information technology company, the salary will usually be twice as high as in any other company. This market is growing very fast. It's highly competitive, well-funded, and sells globally. Information technology professionals are in high demand. Even an office manager, even an accountant, a lawyer, anyone in the company will earn more, in the sense that not just developers, but administrative staff will earn more too. Next, of course, is the pharmaceutical business, which is quite competitive and well-funded, in many ways similar to information technology companies, as products are also created there. And now, for example, we see that the pharmaceutical business is very important. The telecommunications business is also good. Telecommunications operators, banks, foreign, Russian, and other international companies. These are probably the most well-off companies that are willing to pay high salaries. It's worth considering job openings in these fields first. Next, there are so-called professions of the future, where they're also starting to pay well. For example, agriculture. I recently saw some job openings in an agricultural company. I was even surprised by some of the conditions and astronomical salaries, because agriculture is also becoming very science-intensive, with a lot of technology, and it's attracting the best experts. Next is robotics. It's very promising, along with medicine, alternative energy sources, and the entertainment industry. Right now, for example, esports are very popular. I think they're legalizing casinos in Ukraine now, which will also create pretty good conditions. Education is also actively developing and starting to offer opportunities, especially those who teach en masse, children, school students, institutes. There are huge opportunities in huge markets. Next, it's important to understand that salaries in the market depend on various factors. There are many nuances that companies consider when offering a particular job and salary. The more time a company has to find an employee, the lower the salary they will offer. In other words, the longer a company is willing to wait, the lower the salary they will offer. But interestingly, it is the opposite for employees. For a candidate, the more time they have to search for a job, the higher the salary they will ask for. They will not be in a hurry. So the company will not rush to hire at a higher price, and the candidate will not rush to accept a lower salary. Accordingly, the less time there is, the lower the salary an employee is willing to accept, and the more the company is willing to pay. Usually this adjustment happens somewhere along the way. That is, when time is running out, the company starts to raise the salary, and when time is running out for the employee, they start to lower their demands. This, by the way, is normal. If you are entering the job market, it is worth starting with higher demands. You should not sell yourself short right away. And as your search progresses, if you see that nothing is working out, you need to be willing to lower your expectations. That is, you do not need to search forever. It is better to gradually lower your expectations until you and the company meet at some point, and then a different system will be in place. The system of salary increases within the company. Next, let us talk about recruiters. Of course, candidates will inevitably encounter recruiters when looking for a job. There are different types. There is a so-called researcher, not to be confused with a sourcer. This is a recruiter's assistant who may know nothing about the company but is responsible for the initial search for candidates. That is, they might write on LinkedIn or make phone calls. Of course, you should not expect detailed information from them. If the recruiter is a beginner, they will know little about the vacancy. Also, if you see that it is a beginner recruiter, do not expect them to tell you much truth about the job opening. There is an experienced recruiter who knows about the vacancy, the company, and the profession in general. And there is a consultant recruiter, which I call a senior recruiter, who can tell you a lot. So you need to understand that, like all professionals, recruiters also come with different levels of expertise and professionalism. Therefore, you need to gather information from them differently and perceive it differently. In some cases, it might be better to wait for the hiring manager. How does a recruiter search for candidates? There are different approaches. There are complex positions, simple positions, and urgent and non-urgent ones. For example, for an urgent and complex position, they might search for competitors, use LinkedIn, work with an agency, or seek referrals. For non-urgent positions, they might use employee referrals, job site databases, or candidate recommendations. For simple positions, there are also different approaches. It's important to try to utilize as many channels as possible in the search. I showed this slide to point out that it's not the case that all recruiters, for instance, focus only on job sites. Depending on the situation, recruiters use different channels. It's very useful to subscribe to job listings on job sites. When job postings are published on job sites, candidates often visit the site to see what positions are available and to apply. There are so-called permanent job listings. They're up forever. It might seem like they can't find anyone. No, they just need a lot of employees, and there's constant turnover, so the position is never removed. There are job listings that are posted, then archived, then unarchived when needed again. There are job listings that are simply copied from other companies and don't reflect much of the actual job. There are good job listings with unique descriptions. These are the job listings that usually attract the most attention. And there are agency job listings that try to use generic phrases to avoid giving away which client company the position is for. What's the point of all this? The point is, when you see a job listing, don't believe 100% of what's written. In reality, everything inside might be completely different. Consider the job listing as a reason to contact or not contact the company. If there are many job listings, of course, you can analyze them and only respond to the most interesting ones. Where do recruiters publish their job listings? Of course, they try to use as many free resources as possible. Today, these include Facebook groups, Telegram chats, then paid access platforms, and places where they used to get a lot of responses. You shouldn't rely on just one source when looking for a job. It's worth trying to find sources that are free for recruiters. Today, these are Telegram chats and Facebook groups. There are a lot of them now. It's free for recruiters, they have the links, and they post there when they have job openings. For example, there's an HR job postings and resumes group where I see these jobs posted regularly. In other words, the recruiter has this saved. Next, what kind of resumes does a recruiter look at? First and foremost, a recruiter looks at resumes that have the same title as their job openings. So when you post your resume and are asked what kind of job you're looking for, State it the way job titles are most commonly written. Next, regarding recruiters, we're talking briefly today, but we'll have a more detailed session later. A recruiter looks for clear, reputable previous workplaces with an adequate tenure of 2 to 3 years in each position. I often had people come to me who had worked for a year or less in their positions. Often these were related companies and no one considered them. Then I would edit their resumes and they'd immediately get a large number of interviews and find a job relatively quickly. That's why resumes are very important. It's very important. In the resume workshop, I'll thoroughly check your resumes and give recommendations to make them perfect. Very often, the first resume a recruiter receives is the one they consider first. And being first here is important. If it's on a website, for example, they also look at the photo. But it's a fact that we all look at photos. That's why it's important to improve your resume. Next, how a recruiter looks at a resume. It's important to understand that the first look is just 5 to 10 seconds on a resume. This includes, of course, evaluating the photo, overall layout, scanning company names, and job titles. The first 1 or 2 lines of responsibilities, educational achievements, total work experience, tenure at each position, and unique training. Therefore, it's very important to apply the tips we'll be discussing in the second session. Next, why does a recruiter call? Recruiters often call after they've seen a resume. They call to check interest in the position and to hear the person, so a good, confident, and clear voice is very important. To learn about salary expectations, so you need to be prepared to state them, and to clarify details from the resume, to inquire about achievements and motivation, and then to offer an invitation for an interview or propose a task to complete. That's often why they call. How do companies conduct interviews? They evaluate the candidate's arrival time for the interview. That is, they check if the candidate arrived on time, their appearance, how they introduce themselves, how they proceed to the interview location, and how they answer the first question. Sometimes they assess professional knowledge. That is, recruiters are often skilled at assessing knowledge as well. They evaluate achievements, personal qualities, motivation, cultural fit, and how well the candidate fits within the salary range. Sometimes there are completely off-topic questions called bullshit questions. Therefore, it is important to prepare and understand how a recruiter conducts interviews. We will also be covering this in the course. Next, how does a recruiter make a decision? It is based on general statistics. This does not mean it is the right way or that everyone does it this way. It is largely based on personal liking. Of course, experienced recruiters' preferences are formed based on their understanding of candidates. This is what is called intuition, shaped by experience. Then suitable experience, appropriate personal qualities, motivation, fit with company culture, and alignment with the manager's specifics are taken into account. That is, they often know what kind of people managers choose and how they align with salary ranges. So it is very important here to develop empathy and the ability to be likable. Although many companies are implementing advanced selection and assessment tools, decisions are still very often based on personal preferences. Now, here is the truth of the matter. It is very important to know how to interview well. There are people with excellent experience who do not know how to interview, and they do not get hired. And there are people with less impressive experience who know how to interview well, and they get hired. That is the reality of the situation. No matter how great your experience is, if you do not know how to interview well, your chances are low. That is why you need to learn how to soar. Who does the recruiter present to the hiring manager? It is the right experience and achievements. Often it can be a test assignment given by the recruiter. It is an understanding of motivation and alignment with the company's opportunities. It's salary expectations that fit within the range and personal qualities. Therefore, your task is to ensure that the recruiter has all the necessary information about you. That is to help the recruiter evaluate you, help the recruiter gather all the information so that they can properly assess you and present you to the hiring manager. Next, how is salary offered? If an employee or candidate names a salary below the company's range, you'll be offered either the minimum of the range, meaning they'll bring you up to the minimum of the range, or what you asked for. If you named an amount within the range, for example, a range from 1,000 to 1,400, then most likely they'll agree or offer the minimum of the range for the probationary period, and then the desired amount after. If you ask for more than the salary range, they'll likely offer the maximum amount, that is, they'll cap it. And in rare cases, they might revise the range for you, meaning they'll increase it. Therefore, to avoid losing out, it's better to always state 2 figures, the desired and the minimum. For example, what are your expectations? Well, ideally, I'd like 1,500 minimum, but I'm starting from 1,200. This way, the company has a reference point and there's a chance of getting a good offer. Next, how to effectively search for a job. It's very important to understand what a dream job is, how to choose a goal, how to assess your chances, how to develop a strategy, and how to search for a job effectively. Let's start with understanding what a dream job is. A dream job is usually a combination of three important elements. It's when you're doing what you love at work, maybe not all the time, but preferably at least half the time or more, when you're skilled at handling your responsibilities, and when you're well compensated for it. This combination of three elements is what makes a dream job for a person. A dream job, therefore, involves professionalism, passion for what you do, and the right level of income. You can evaluate any current job you have to see if it's your dream job. There's a test for this. In the test, you need to answer questions on a scale from 1 to 10. You'll have 3 sets of questions covering professionalism, love for your work, and salary. You need to rate each of these items on a 10-point scale. We won't be doing this now. It will be after the class. The presentation will be available for you to see how close your job is to ideal. Then you need to calculate the average, which means adding up all 3 scores and dividing by 3. Here's how to interpret the test results. If you score between 45 and 50 points, that's excellent. The lower the score, the worse it is, which means something isn't right and needs to be changed. After you've taken the test, it's worth looking at which area scored the lowest and which question in that area scored the lowest. I recommend thinking about and setting a goal for what you can change in the next 3 months to improve the situation in this area and on this issue. For example, if you scored lowest on the point about saving at least 10%, you need to think about what you can do to start improving that. Moving on. Sometimes there's a feeling that it's too late to think about a dream career and that you should settle for just about anything. This is a misconception. It's never too late to start. The world knows many people who started quite late in life. For example, the current president of America is quite mature, let's say, and became president for the first time. Of course, we can't say he started from scratch, and becoming president isn't exactly easy either. Many business people also became successful at a fairly advanced age, so it's never too late to start a dream career. Let's continue. How to choose your dream job. For instance, you might not know what you could come to love. Here are a few questions that can quickly help you understand what might be a dream job for you. Think about where you went to work every day with joy. What profession would allow you to utilize your knowledge and talents, not just knowledge, but talents too? In what kind of work do you find meaning for yourself and society? What kind of work can help you achieve your goals? And in what profession do you want to improve yourself? Answers to these questions will help you understand what your dream job might be. Let's move on. Once you've figured all this out for yourself, you list different options. For example, different positions emerge here, and then you rate them on a 10-point scale according to these 4 criteria, how well each job you're considering meets these criteria, and you simply get scores indicating how preferable each job is for you. I always recommend listing your current position as one of the options if you're employed. If you're not working, just look at your past position. Here's my position where I worked. It had this score, and here are 2 options I'm considering with these scores. Oh, interesting. Next, when you've possibly seen some other career path or different function, don't think that if you're an accountant, how can you become, say, a commercial director or a marketing director or something else? You need to think, if I'm an accountant now and I want to become a commercial director, what positions come before the commercial director role? Write down all these positions and see, with my knowledge and skills, where I can start from. Sometimes, to build your career and pursue your dreams, you need to take 1, 2, or even 3 steps back. But if you take steps backward, considering that you've stepped back, you start moving forward quite rapidly. In other words, your forward progress is much faster than that of others who are just starting out. Because essentially you're already at this level in terms of skills. You've just stepped back to get hired for this job. And yes, there's a point here. Sometimes it means a temporary setback in terms of salary, but again, it's temporary. But sometimes it's better to take a hit now so that later, thanks to this dream job, you can reach a higher level. And of course, it's worth considering your personal finances and how much your situation allows for this. Where to look for a job, and specifically your dream job. These are, of course, job sites. Yes, job openings are posted there. It's one of the top channels. Next, this is, of course, LinkedIn. It's a popular resource in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Moldova, with more and more people using it. Hundreds of millions of people worldwide use it. Next, company websites. Yes, it turns out that some positions are not posted on job sites. Company Facebook pages are very popular now. And various Facebook groups as well, Telegram chats. Now there are chats for many positions and job openings are often posted there. It's also worth telling acquaintances and familiar colleagues that you're job hunting, because people often ask each other, we need someone like this. Do you know anyone? So if you speak up about yourself, one of them might recommend you. Next, how do you search for a job? It's important to understand that job searching is a job in itself. Job searching is a numbers game. The more actions you take, the higher your chances. Ultimately, your ideal job, your job search is a funnel consisting of how many resumes you sent, how many of those resumes were viewed by a recruiter, how many phone interviews were conducted, and how many in-person interviews you had. The more you have at all stages, the higher your chances of finding a job. If we take an average person, a man or woman with a college degree and 3 years of work experience, middle-aged in an entry-level common profession, there are many such people in the job market. So let's think about how many job offers you need to get, how many interviews and phone screenings you need to go through, and how many resumes you need to send to find your dream job. The average statistics suggest that it's distributed approximately like this. That is, in order to choose a good job and not settle for the first option that comes along, you need to get at least 3 offers. Usually to get one job offer, you need to go through 5 interviews. This is still quite optimistic. Only 1 out of 3 phone calls will result in an invitation for an interview. Typically, you'll only get a call back on 1 out of 30 resumes sent. If we multiply all this, you need to send 1,350 resumes to be guaranteed to get a pretty good job with a good selection. So don't expect that if you've sent out 5 resumes, you'll immediately land a great job. Okay, a comment. According to the comment, I sent resumes to 21 companies and went through 9 interviews. In the end, I got hired by my dream company on the 3rd try, but these are just numbers. So consider how much time you have to search for your dream job. If you're not in a hurry and have 6 months, that's 26 weeks. You need to send out 50 resumes each week. This includes applying to the same positions where you haven't been invited yet. This doesn't necessarily mean that your resume wasn't liked. It might mean that your resume hasn't caught a recruiter's eye yet. And if you have 3 months to find a job, you need to send out 100 resumes a week. And if you have a month and a half, then 200 resumes a week. So don't delude yourself into thinking that you'll definitely get a job from sending out just a small number of resumes. It's better to aim for big numbers and get either many offers or get them much faster. But it's worth focusing on this approach. How does it usually work? At best, people send out 10 resumes a week. That's a fact. Only after 3 weeks does the person receive their first call. After 9 weeks, the first invitation for an interview, and after 4 to 5 weeks, the first job offer. By this point, the person already considers themselves a total loser, and of course they accept the first offer. That's why many people end up with a job that's far from their dream job. How should it be done? Ideally, you should aim for about 50 applications weekly. That's a good average. Try to have 5 interviews a week and make the decision whether or not to work somewhere only after receiving an offer. So you shouldn't be like, oh, I don't like this company. Oh, I don't like this job opening. Oh, I don't want it. No, job hunting is a job in itself. You need to do it well and make the decision whether you want to work there or not only after receiving a job offer. Firstly, even the first job offer from some weak, uninteresting company greatly boosts your self-confidence. Secondly, it's experience. Thirdly, you might be mistaken. You had one opinion of the company. In reality, it might be a really great company. It's also very useful to know your competitors, that is, to look at who else similar to you is looking for work, what experience they have, who they are, to see what kind of people, what fresh resumes are being posted for your specific field, for your position on popular job sites. Top 6 tips from today's lesson on finding your dream job. Look for a job in a company that pays well. Send out at least 10 resumes per week. This is the critical minimum, but 35 is better, of course. Subscribe to job listings to be the first to receive information about them, and send your resume as quickly as possible. Study your competitors, what they write, where they study, how much money they are asking for. Make your decision only after receiving an offer, and research the company and its product before the interview. These are the general recommendations I can give. Homework for those already in the course. For your position, make a list of companies with high salaries in your opinion, and follow these companies' Facebook pages, that is, find and subscribe to them. Also subscribe to job listings on popular job sites in your country. It is advisable to connect on LinkedIn, look at the resumes of 10 competitors, and write in your homework what their resumes have that yours does not. Maybe you know this information and just have not included it. Useful materials. I mentioned that based on the materials from the article and the courses, Roman Zhikarev and I wrote a book called $1 Million Resume. I definitely recommend this book to everyone as a great supplement to this course. And I have received a lot of positive feedback from people about this book. People even tell me that this book has changed their lives. To me and Roman, among others. Some people, for example, tell him this, especially those who know him better. What is next? This was the first session where we peeked behind the curtain of recruiting. We took a little look at how it works from the other side. In the second session, we will discuss how to create $1 million resume. And I will provide feedback on the resumes of all participants. In other words, we will be perfecting your resumes with your own hands, but with my hints and feedback, so that it will be super useful. With this, today's session comes to an end, and I take this opportunity to invite everyone to take this course. I believe your investment in yourself will definitely pay off, and I would be grateful if you could write what was most valuable for you today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will answer them. For me as a recruiter, the statistics were useful. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, all right, thank you very much. Let us get to work. All right. Great lesson. It was unexpected to look at job searching from the job seeker's perspective. I really got into it. Well, okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for your interest and participation. Have a wonderful weekend and happy holidays, everyone. See you soon. We will also have open classes next week. We will have surveys on total rewards and SPI. So keep an eye out for announcements in the Academy chat and the Academy Telegram chat and join us. That is all for now. Bye-bye.